Also something to South Africa. That's a problem. What's it called? Ethiopia. Actually, it's really what last thing I had just I felt sick. The distance was so what specialist in plants. And this management plans and
yeah, gentlemen, we are already live streaming, so the world can hear us.
Good job.
Okay. Welcome to Digital Davos 2025. I'm honored to host the panel about supply chain and Africa. And it's a really urgent topic. We have a lot of nations, powerful nations right now competing about the supply chain in Africa. We know that China, with the Silk Road project, is extremely increasing the influence in Africa. We know that also Africa is working now more together than ever and is one of the world's richest continent with all the natural resources which you can imagine. And we have, of course, interests from the whole world in doing business with Africa. We have interesting developments starting over the last decades, which we saw with South Africa, also when we go to the Middle East, which is still on the African continent, we saw a lot of interesting developments. Right now, I'm pleased to have Dr. Nihara, which is renowned scientist with multiple awards, including from Harvard School and professor at UCLA, chairman of public traded companies, and most famous for his development of a treatment for sickle cell anemia. He will probably start by his introduction also to introduce later on a little bit why sickle cell is more permanent in Africa and what is the supply chain challenge in this case. I'm also honored to have I know your last name, Georgina. I know your first name. Sorry, like your last name.
Namiyomba.
She is involved in NGOs in relation to Africa, and as a legal study, as a lawyer, she brings a legal perspective to the panel, which is necessary. Myself, I'm Karl Seelig, GmbLX, SPC. We are a segregated portfolio company. We invest in different structures, and Dr. Nihara has also a fund at GmbLX, SPC, which is for supply chains in Africa dedicated. So I am happy to start the discussion, and I start with may I call you Georgina in the panel? It's much easier. Like I'm so sorry. So I start with Georgina, and to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're coming from, and also first, what brought you to the WEF? I see you have a badge. So what brought you here?
Good morning. My name is Georgina Namiyomba. I'm a lawyer by profession. I specialized in compliance from here in Switzerland at the University of Freiburg. Currently, I work with Danish Refugee Council as the country risk and compliance coordinator, and also a board member at Asante Africa Foundation in Uganda, at LASI in Tanzania, and Warm Hearts Foundation in Uganda. So I must say I have this vast experience in advising international nonprofits on compliance. Yes. What brings me to Davos? Well, I'm a to Davos, to WEF. I'm a global shaper here. And the World Economic Forum. I'm the vice creator for the Freeburg Hub. Yeah, so this is my second Davos. Last year we've invited us, and this year I came for two things: to speak here at Digital Davos, and also to network and get to know more people and learn about the amazing work people are doing in the AI space. Yeah, so basically that's what brings me here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, Dr. Nihara, we know what brought you here because you're the host from this panel, but please introduce yourself. You have an amazing background, and please.
Thank you. This is Yutaka Nihara, and I am a physician trained at UCLA. I found interest in sickle cell disease from early on in my training, and I have been working on doing something for sickle cell patients since 1992. We discovered that using amino acid to prevent oxidation stress in the red blood cells of sickle cell makes a patient's condition much, much better. It turns out that L-glutamine have a significant effect, positive effect on sickle cell patients. Since then, we got the approval by the US FDA, and now we are trying to bring this to all over the world, especially Africa, India, and the Middle East. Because since I started working on this, our estimate for the number of patients have been increasing because we have better screening technique over the last 30 years. When I first started, the world estimate was officially like 4 million patients. But then 10 years ago, it was increased to like 25 million patients. Today, we believe that that probably exceeds 50 million, and most of the patients are in India, Africa, and the Middle East. And the supply chain is going to be very important because demand for any medication that will help sickle cell is going to enormously increase.
Thank you. So when we are speaking about supply chain, what do you think about the current issues of supply chains in Africa? What do you see? And let's take supply chain also more in general, not only basically the product cycles. Let's see it also from migration, from people going from one country to the other, and skilled labor force, everything which you need to create products. And I want to leave out right now the Silk Road project from China. This will be on the follow-up question. What you see right now is biggest issues in Africa.
Thank you. So in response to that question, what I see, what the challenges are in supply chain, I'll start with talking about the limited access to capital for companies in Africa. As you know, Africa has all these vast resources, and there are Africans who own companies that would, let's say, would love to participate in mining, for example, but they don't have access to capital to mine and participate in the global trade, in the global supply chain. Then, yes, we also have these regional integration bodies like the AFCTA, we have ECOWAS, we have ESC, in East Africa, we have ESC, then there is COMESA. Yes, we have them. Some have even been there for a while, but the integration hasn't yet been fully realized. So we still have some challenges and hindrances in promoting access to movement, like movement of goods or transportation around the continent or even globally. And same applies also to the movement of skilled workforce, even just to where you still need to apply for let's say Uganda, you have to apply for a tourist visa to, let's say, South Africa. So we still have those challenges. The integration hasn't yet been fully realized to open up borders to ease the transportation of goods and services across the continent, and also to access the international markets. The other thing is we have a burgeoning middle class that has this very interesting demand for sophisticated goods participating in online trading. We have Jumia in Africa. We have Uber, we have Faras, we have Safe Border in Uganda. Like, people are actually in like, they're embracing technology, but there is also still a gap in extending that. Okay, so the people who have this demand are mostly concentrated in urban areas and not in the rural areas. So there is that gap still there, because probably some are not yet that educated, or they are not yet fully aware of what is happening in the tech space, or some even have no interest from the country where I come from. Yeah, so there is a need and a gap and a challenge in bridging a gap for Africans to access this education in STEM, in technology. This could, in universities, I know it is there, but when you go to the grassroots levels, like from nursery to high school, it's still lacking. So if it can be embedded in our curriculum so that the students grow up knowing and they get interested in these topics, and we get a skilled workforce to work in these industries and promote these global supply chain technologies, and also participate in the global supply chain, it will go a lot. So for me, in my opinion, the challenges we have is the limited the integration that hasn't yet been fully realized, the limited skilled labor. Though I'm a lawyer, but I'm not fully a trade on technology. I know some aspects, but there are many of us. We would love to, but we have that limitation. So there is that limitation to access that kind of knowledge, which is relevant where we are going. And also, of course, the inadequate transport system. Yeah, thank you.
So a short follow-up question for this. How much of the supply chain problems are based on the distribution of wealth in Africa? We have a lot of really poor people, but we have also super rich people. So the distribution of wealth, do you think, just with one or two sentences, does this affect the development of effective supply chain?
Yes, so much. Because I will start from the governments. Most of the wealthy people are actually based in the government or those close to the government. So you find that that's already a gap in transparency in supply chain. Some governments are establishing bodies to buy goods or services from farmers, and the governments are the ones that export the goods. So that's like already a gap, that gap in the supply chain. So yes, that distribution of wealth is already a problem because there is no transparency. Thank you.
So, and this is where I wanted to transition to Professor Niara. And as an expert, I know that you treated family members from presidents and multiple rich people as well as poor people with your effective measurement. So what I would like you to tell us first, that how you see that because diseases are not selective, we all get them. COVID was not selective. You could not buy your way out of COVID. You cannot buy your way out of sickle cell. You can probably buy yourself out when you need an organ, but I mean, it's illegal, but other diseases you cannot buy yourself out. So we will later on follow up that this is probably an effective way for the fund to implement the supply chain. But right now, I would like to hear from Dr. Nehara. How is it with the disease and the distribution in Africa, and basically the responses which you, for example, got from Kenya?
Thank you. So first of all, when you deal with disease, I think we have to definitely take into consideration availability, and also distributability. For example, sickle cell disease affect people in Africa, India, and Middle East, and other places, as I mentioned. It can affect. Oh yes, yeah. These, yes, thank you. Yeah, 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 yeah. The reason why, yeah. Thank you. So the reason why sickle cell disease affects this area is that this is a genetic disease. It's passed on from parents to children, because if a patient or person has one gene, then it actually prevents a person from having malaria. So in the area where malaria is prevalent, this gene was flourishing. However, unfortunately, if a person inherits one gene from the father and the other gene from mother and ends up with two genes, then they're going to have this devastating disease with lots of pain, organ failures, and eventually death at young age. So this is very, very serious disease. You know, when I started my training in late 80s to early 1990s, there was no treatment whatsoever for this condition. So I really wanted to do something. Fortunately, we found something. And as we were doing research and as we were doing this, of course, if we can just do gene therapy to fix a gene, that's nice. But we knew that today, providing gene therapy to 20 million patients is impossible. Even to 500,000 patients would be impossible. We really have to think about something that is, first of all, financially feasible. So the medicine has to be relatively inexpensive, and also something that can be distributed even if there is no fancy or like very sophisticated medical facility, something that can be distributed from clinic, and if possible, something that can be distributed by even by non-doctors. So our focus is something that is safe, effective, and practical. Fortunately, we found the agent, but now our issue is that, well, before this compound was not really considered to be something for sickle cell disease, and today we can produce only so much. And if we used all of the pharmaceutical grade L-glutamine, that's the medication, we can cover only 200,000 patients. But actually, our estimate now is that there's more than 50 million patients in those areas. I mean, 200,000 patients is not even a very, very small fraction. I mean, it's just like drop in the bucket. So how are we going to resolve this dilemma? Well, once we know that there's demand, I think we just have to build more factories, plants that can produce this. Shipment is pretty much figured out now. Right now, we are shipping the product from Brazil, run by a Japanese company. And I also purchased a plant in Japan. This plant was used before, but because of lack of demand, they stopped producing. But when we realized that there is high demand, we wanted to revive this. So we're in the middle of trying to revive this plant now. But I think we need a lot more too. Probably can cover 300,000 patients, and we need a lot more. And in U.S., Africa, and Middle East, if possible, we can build these plants, and that's where investment is necessary. But once these plants are made, we do have the demand, and we'll be able to bring it. The beauty of this treatment, and we need to always consider this type of treatment, it has to be something that can be distributed to those rural areas where medical facility is not available, because that's where most of the patients are staying. And of course, the cost has to be affordable by the patients or the government or NGOs, so that it can be distributed to as many people as we can distribute this medication to.
So I have now a legal question. We know a lot of supply chains, import, export, have legal restrictions on it. your opinion, first of all, is the approach which Dr. Niara just explained feasible because it affects everyone. So the interest is also in the highest up political environment. And do you think that basically when the supply chain is done for pharmaceutical goods legally correct, that this can be function as a blueprint for other goods for export or import, because we know that Africa is, and I'm sorry to say this, probably some of our audience will not agree, is exploited right now. We cannot say it another way. It's shamefully how less we pay for some goods which we take out of Africa, and this has to change. And do you see a legal way to use pharmaceutical distribution ethically to reverse it or to integrate it to make it a blueprint which gives nations in Africa the chance to develop and to have basically the fruits of the productivity of the country?
Thank you so much. In my view, regarding that question, from a legal side,
Put it here, it doesn't fall over. I know you don't put it normally on.
okay.
It's doubles.
Thank you. So, what I would say about that is, the governments, through the regional bodies or back within their like the national governments themselves, they could meet and sit down and discuss a harmonized way of coming up with standards to manufacture. Let's say, for example, medicines. There is a drug that is very relevant for sickle cells. I think it's called
Hydroxyurea.
Thank you. That drug. It's very, very, very important, but also hard to access, yet it can actually be manufactured from Africa. But what's lacking, it's the laws. Okay, we have the laws, but they're not implemented, and some are not sufficient or adequate to have it manufactured. So they could come up with standards that are implemented jointly or uniformly across the continent on how clinical trials are done, research is done to promote research, manufacture of these goods with the medicines within the continent itself. And also if they are to import in medicines from, let's say, the EU or the US, because that's where the leading pharmaceutical companies are, and India, which where we get the generic medicines, because sadly that's what our people can afford. If some stringent conditions are also put in place to determine the quality, what comes into our continent, that would go a long way. So I think it's a matter of governments sitting, coming up with these standards. They implement them across. If it means, let's say, coming up with like a protocol to the AFCTA or the Africa Medicines Agency, coming up with these uniform standards and holding states accountable to see that they implement them, they give them goals, just like FATF gave governments goals to reduce anti-money laundering, and it has done a tremendous job. I think it would go a long way in helping resolve that challenge, and that blueprint could, in the pharmaceutical world, could be used as a starting point for other sectors like renewable energy. That's what I think. Thank you.
So to Dr. Nihara, we know there are multiple tracks in sickle cell. We know also and that all tracks have other mechanism how they function. Could you give us a short overview over the tracks but also for the supply chain. Now, the most important overview is not only the efficiency, but also then the cost. And the third thing is how the supply chain may be influenced, because, of course, a big pharma may push a product which is not so efficient just down the supply chain, and other product which is equally efficient will just disappear. I mean, we had first the electric engine, and then we had to invent the other engine for driving a car, and now we are back by the electric engine. So, um, uh, so please describe the difference between the trucks, the efficiency, price point, and the interest from the different players to push it down.
Okay, so over the years, number of medication were attempted to be developed for sickle cell disease, and most of them failed. And I won't go into details as to why they failed, although I have some ideas. When we really focus on the patient, I guess not just for sickle cell, any medication, we should focus on safety, efficacy, and the practicality in distribution and administration. In some cases, you cannot meet all these because it's just too difficult. Recently, hydroxyurea was approved recently, meaning like 1998. Until then, there was absolutely nothing for sickle cell disease. Unfortunately, hydroxyurea was not developed for disease like sickle cell, but it was developed to treat cancer. And sickle cell disease is so devastating. Both the medical community and the patient's community accepted this treatment, even though this has a risk of causing cancer, suppressing bone marrow, and other things. But at least it did something. It reduced these symptoms. And then our medication was next. Ours was the first to be approved for children, second for adults, right next to hydroxyurea. Well, big difference between ours and hydroxyurea was that our medication does not cause any major complications. Our product has never been associated with the major complications such as bone marrow suppression or cancer or infection or anything like this. Then there was another medication that came that was not effective at all, but for some reason FDA has approved it, and then now it is shelved because it is just too expensive. It may have worked for pricing wise, worked in the US and European economy, but it was impossible to bring that kind of pricing over to where the patients really are, like Africa and India. And there was another medication which was based on injection. And of course, I had a lot of objection against that because it was an injection of antibody against something called selectin. And I said, why are you injecting antibody to prevent the selectin activity? Because this, if you keep injecting antibody, you're going to cause resistance fairly quickly. Of course, this was dropped not just by the company, but also by the regulatory agency. Now there is, well, again, the last two that I mentioned were very, very expensive. I won't go into actual price, but it was impossible for most people or most countries to afford this. In contrast, that hydroxyurea is relatively inexpensive, and of course, our medication is very inexpensive too. But the difference is that ours was safe, not just efficacious, but also very safe. Now, of course, there is bone marrow transplant, which is really nice, and there are like a number of patients who actually got cured by bone marrow transplant. But for this, you have to have a donor, and the cost is into millions. So again, this is not something that's available to most patients, but very selected few. And I'm really glad for those people who actually got the cure through bone marrow transplant. And then more recently, gene therapy and gene editing has come in. But again, these therapies, we're talking about treatment cost of millions and millions. And again, it's not available for most of the patients in the whole world. So, interestingly enough, I've been working and studying sickle cell physiology for many years, and there are many medications potentially we can develop, just like L-glutamine. And I truly believe that if we can combine few of these medications, which I believe we can develop, we'll be able to eradicate most of the complications of sickle cell disease, and perhaps we can make sickle cell disease like HIV, because in like late 80s and early 90s, or 80s and early 90s, HIV was a deadly disease that brought death to people who had this HIV very quickly. But today, we hardly ever talk about, people with HIV being sick because, a couple medications really did this. And I truly believe that we can do the same thing for sickle cell disease. And that's where we are.
Going back just to supply chain,
Yes.
just numbers, please. How many patients are in Africa?
There are more than 20 million patients in Africa today. And today, even if...
How many people can we cover with? All treatments.
If we were able to bring all the medication that we have in terms of L-glutamine, we can cover 200,000 patients.
Thank you. You have a lot contacts with NGOs in Africa. How important is sickle cell versus other diseases like malaria and, of course, the HIV? Where does sickle cell rank in the list? Top 10, top 100?
Honestly, I wouldn't say, I'll rank it from this view. Top 3, no. Top 10, yes. Most organizations mostly advocate for persons living with HIV/AIDS. Sickle cells, the movements are still silent. Unfortunately, there is still need to create more awareness. Yeah.
As we reaching the end of the session, I would like you to speak freely about what your NGO is right now doing and how it relates to the supply chain in Africa.
Thank you. So I work with Danish Refugee Council, so I'll speak with it.
This I was wondering.
Yes, so being compliance, I work closely with the support arm, and we have a fully fledged supply chain department because we procure goods that we distribute to beneficiaries. So I would say in line with supply chain, that is how I'm connected to it, because I advise on agreements, the agreement to sign with the vendors, tax-related issues when we are importing in, let's say, the trucks, the quality of goods we get from the suppliers, the sustainability models, so that whatever we distribute to the beneficiaries, the refugees, is of high quality and not substandard. Yeah.
May I just follow-up questions. When it's a Danish refugee, and do we speak at refugees which could already migrant, or do we speak at refugees displaced from one country to the other one, where your NGO functions also in Africa?
So for refugees, within the context of Uganda, we have those who live conflict areas like South Sudan, Congo, and coming to Uganda. But we also have the Eritreans. Well, right now, we don't know where to place them, but for now they're immigrants. But our main focus is on the South Sudanese, and the Congolese refugees, not asylum seekers. But when you come to Denmark in Europe, we also deal with the asylum seekers. And we have the Danish demining group that deals with removing, is that the word? Landmines, in those conflict areas, dealing with bombs. So we also have that aspect as well. But for Africa, we mostly respond, we deal in protection for refugees from war-torn areas. Yes, thank you.
Dr. Niara, same, please. Speak freely about. I know that you are also functioning in India right now and Oman. Just if you could elaborate with President Odinga and your current relationship, and this would be great.
Well, I'm really glad that you asked regarding a priority of sickle cell disease in Africa, and our colleague's answer is very right on the target. And one of the reasons is that for some reason there has been stigma against sickle cell disease. Fortunately, though, in India, Prime Minister Modi decided to, with the population people of India, to make this one of the top priority agenda to tackle sickle cell disease. And I'm working with Indian government right now to try to bring our medications to India. And also, I work with Mr. Odinga and in Kenya. Because his grandniece was treated with our treatment years ago, and she's doing quite well. We really need a lot. If we start distributing medication to this area, immediately we'll know that we need a lot more supply. So in order to meet this, and to make sure that we can distribute this to people, we want to work on the sources. Interestingly enough, this is all so like vegetation or agriculture related industry, because source of our medication is sugar, come from sugarcane, sugar beets, corn. So and then also byproduct of our product is also ethanol. So that's kind of interesting. The point that I'm trying to make is that making this available to most people is possible. We have already cleared the efficacy part, safety part, and practicality part, price point. But we just don't have enough medication. So this is where supply chain issue, dealing with the supply chain issue becomes really, really important agenda for us. And right now we know how to ship this, we know how to store this. And one thing that's left is like we need to make sure that we'll be able to have enough of this available. So we are looking to first make it available with what we have, and then after that we want to build more plans so it will be available for most patients.
Thank you very much and for participating at our Supply Chain African panel in Davos 2025. I hope you both have a good stay in Davos. And I know we are all busy running from panels to panels. Basically, I don't run, I'm just staying here, but our speakers. So I wish that you're good success in Davos, and thank you. Welcome to Digital Davos. We are live, and we have basically. I have to apologize. I did some mistake. I have two moderators and one panelist. So happens in Davos, and I can say only. Sorry. So we changed this format for this panel a little bit for a round table because everyone has really interesting things to contribute, and I give it right now to David, please, which leads the roundtable, please.
Well, thanks, Karl, for organizing. I'm David Doss, founder of CKC Fund, which manages digital asset investments in partnership with Chain BLX. Great to be here in Davos.
Hi there, I'm Rachel Horn, Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Filecoin Foundation. Filecoin is a decentralized storage network powered by cryptocurrency.
And I'm Megan Clement. I'm a founding officer at Filecoin Foundation, which, as Rachel said, works in decentralized storage and is a cryptocurrency.
Well, to start things off, what do you see as the challenges as well as the opportunities in decentralized web infrastructure, especially as relates to governance and current global challenges?
Sure, I'll start us off. I definitely think that decentralized infrastructure has a sort of like new opportunity using blockchain technology. I think the DPIN movement, the decentralized physical infrastructure movement, is sort of especially important right now as we're looking at a lot of the changes that are happening in in current technology. I think being able to combine the power of blockchain, having things that are independently verifiable with new emerging technologies such as AI, gives us an opportunity to really take back a lot of the internet, decentralize a lot of the infrastructure that has previously really become part of a tech culture that is extractive and I think is against the values of the original internet. Rachel, do you have any thoughts?
No, I mean, that's sure. I mean, what I'd love to talk about is a little bit more about the Filecoin network, what it is, why it matters, how we're involved, what we're doing with it. So, of course, the Filecoin Foundation, we don't own the Filecoin network. We don't operate the Filecoin network. The foundation exists to help govern the network, support storage providers, support builders who are building tools on the network to make it valuable for everyone. Yesterday, we announced that 500,000 artifacts are now uploaded and stored to the Filecoin network for long-term preservation. And that includes an incredible array of really interesting content. For example, the Smithsonian Natural History Museum is working with the Alexander Graham Bell original recordings, this Volta library, and they have uploaded 300 of the original recordings to the Filecoin network. These were previously unheard before. They found a way to make them audible again, and then for long-term preservation and safekeeping, they stored them on the Filecoin network. So another example, sort of on the other end of the spectrum, is MIT put several open courseware programs onto the Filecoin network, which means that anybody can access these classes that were previously like really only available to a select group of people. Anywhere in the world, they can access these classes, they can learn, they can grow, they can advance their careers. So it's both this like ambitious vision of preserving the most important information and also opening up access to information for everyone.
David, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, let's see. I mean, well, yeah, I love this triple moderated panel. As I got a lot of awesome brain power here in Davos. So yeah, I mean, well, I like, Megan, that you had mentioned DPIN. You know, I think thinking about this from my perspective and more kind of the liquid digital asset investment side of things, I'm just having been on the conference circuit over the last, year or so, I just keep hearing DePIN in a way that really reminds me of being at, say, Consensus or Ethereal or some of these big conferences back in, I'd say maybe 2019 or late 2018 or early 2019, and hearing the word DeFi for kind of among the first time, and kind of that same very strong narrative conviction of this longer term potential, that it feels comparatively early days of something that could become very, very big. So I think that's something where I'm really excited about. The DePIN narrative in this crypto space. One thing that I'm intrigued about in terms of how this affects kind of current political and macroeconomic conditions is what I would say is kind of this triple relationship between physical infrastructure, supply chain, manufacturing on the one hand, digital assets on the other hand, and then this push for I'd say fairly sweeping political changes around things like self-sovereign data, tariffs, kind of the relocalization of a lot of these economies. So I'm curious what you both are seeing in terms of how that's interplaying right now.
It is really interesting to see how, as different markets open up and are more receptive to crypto and blockchain technology, all of these amazing projects are like rushing in to fill that void and offer new opportunities. At the same time, as you see countries locked down, you're seeing many projects just sort of like stand by the wayside. And then, of course, you're also seeing the sea change where basically 4 years around the world, different countries open up and close their doors. So one of the areas actually where we're seeing some interesting growth is in Dubai. They have written some like laws and guardrails around crypto that have made it opened up some interesting opportunities. I know that we're working with some groups in Dubai to use Filecoin for real estate, to track and monitor real estate, and so that's been really fun to see. And we'll see what happens in the U.S. with the new administration, and definitely there's growing support for creating some rules of the road for crypto and blockchain technology. So we're really excited to see what can happen in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've really barely scratched the surface of what blockchain as a technology can do. And like you said, David, it definitely is by far the early days. I think that it's, like Rachel was saying, it's really a shame that blockchain technology has all sort of gets lumped into this large basket of being considered, a currency and, gets the sort of regulatory treatment associated with that. And I think it's really limited what we've been able to do with the growth of this technology. Because at its core, blockchain is just something that is independently verifiable. That instead of having to use like a government or a company to do the verification, it's something that you're just able to use math. And that's a really powerful thing. As like the examples you were giving with supply chain, with DePIN networks, there's a whole slew of technologies that are being enabled by blockchain that have been really slowed due to, the inefficient regulatory hurdles by being sort of lumped in as something that is, more of a financial mechanism. And I think that we're really seeing, especially with DePIN, especially with, the deep need for things like storage that's needed for AI, for data, the adoption of blockchain just as a technology. And I think that's really exciting.
Well, I guess that answers some questions, but raises for every one question that answers, it raises more topics, which I love. So, well, I mean, just related to that, because Megan, you were mentioning AI. How are you seeing at Filecoin kind of the organization as well as the decentralized web and decentralized storage space? How are you seeing these evolving with these new technologies like AI, with quantum computing, which have become increasingly a bit, speaking of narratives, more buzzwords recently? I mean, Filecoin's been around since before DPIN was even a word. So, I mean, yes, it's early days, but also you were early days even for being early days. So, how has this, since Filecoin's inception, how have things changed in terms of how they improve, but also what new challenges are you seeing and what new opportunities?
So there's an incredible opportunity now as AI there's been some questions this week I've heard up and down the promenade. Wow, is AI really overtaking crypto as like the new storyline? And the answer is no, they go really truly hand in hand. And I think Filecoin in particular is at a really special place in the middle of these two technologies because, I mean, at the simplest level, every time you build a large language model, you're using these incredible amounts of data, right? And then each time you train a model, you tweak the underlying data sets, you want to be able to secure and archive copies of that data so you can see how the models change over time and how their outputs change over time. That's a huge trove of data, and Filecoin is perfectly positioned for storage in that way. We're working with a bunch of different AI agents that are leveraging Filecoin, and then that's what we get to do at the foundation, which is really fun, is like reach out to those organizations, see how we can offer support. What core to our mission is transparency and trust in information. And so any of these AI models that are any way that we can work with them to create decentralized AI that is both transparent and secure, and you can see the underlying data sources, like that's a sweet spot for us. So that's been really fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something really powerful as AI, as we push the limits of what AI can do about a file storage mechanism that's, inherently created in a digital way. It has, something that's inherent to the Filecoin network is that all of the data is content hashed. That is how we're able to use this, widespread decentralized infrastructure, is that when you're pulling the data, you're not pulling it from a specific location, you're pulling it based on that content hash. And this content hash is inherently machine readable. Like this is the way that AI understands the world and is able to interact with the world. And so being able to, have a data infrastructure that is built in this way, is really, like Rachel said, just goes hand in hand with the evolution we're seeing in AI. What do you think about all this, David?
Well, I mean, to that hand-in-hand point, I guess the analogy that I like is that if AI is the train that's taking us all to progress, the promised land, whatever you want to call it, then perhaps blockchain is the rails that kind of like what you're talking about providing that version control, providing that support network to kind of stabilize things. Rachel, you mentioned AI agents. Talk about narratives. That's about as hot as a narrative can get right now within crypto, but also outside of that with announcements from major Fortune 50 companies. Could you tell us more about what Filecoin is doing around the AI agent space?
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot. I don't have my notes in front of me.
You knew this was coming.
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of, we're working with Nuclear AI, Bagel, Aether. Those are three at the top of my head. But I don't have the details at my fingertips. But we're definitely open, and if there are folks listening who are building an AI and are looking to decentralize and are, reach out. You can find us on like everything on LinkedIn and on Twitter, on X, on Blue Sky. One of the cool things about Blue Sky, not that we're talking about it, but we should, is that one of the underlying technologies of Blue Sky is called IPLD. It's like a library. It's related to content hashing, and that is one of the underlying technologies in the Filecoin tech stack. So it's just really fun to see a lot of these new technologies like Filecoin and IPFS in action, and Blue Sky is really picking up steam. And so it's cool to watch that grow. Do you know more about what's going on in our AI agent world?
I think we can pull Porter in.
Yeah, we could, but he's upstairs. He'll be on, you stay on this session,
Yeah.
because that's the next panel.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, I think with AI agents being such a hot narrative, people are gonna, they'll be waiting, waiting with bated breath for that answer from Porter. But so th- I guess as far as, and I love, by the way, that you mentioned, basically bringing a lot of these decentralized projects into decentralized backends and decentralized storage. I think one of the ironies of this blockchain and Web3 space is that a lot of these projects are actually still reliant on, Amazon Web Services and other kind of centralized systems. So you have kind of a centralized, but then the underlying core can still often be fairly centralized. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, I think, with organizations like Filecoin. Speaking of a lot of things going on behind the scenes. I mean, I know that the Filecoin Foundation is also, I believe, has a fairly active sort of investment, either monetarily or in terms of effort into in the digital asset space, regards what you guys are doing.
Sure. I mean, I think that so at the Filecoin Foundation, we don't, typically do investments. We no. I mean, and it's not that we are fundamentally opposed to it. We might in the future, but we, our primary core focus is to build the Filecoin economy and be the long-term stewards of the Filecoin ecosystem. And so for the most part, we are not the ones who give grants.
Yes. So in that
yeah.
sense, how are you basically helping to grow the Filecoin economy beyond just File? Grant.
Yeah, I mean, we are to sort of the bread and butter core for many years, bring both Web 2 and Web 3 projects onto the Filecoin network and show them how to integrate with decentralized storage and show them how them with building all of these future technologies that we're talking about, integrating with AI, looking to be able to do things in a more automated way than what they're able to do with Amazon, and also create a better moat than you would be able to do with a centralized company like Amazon or Microsoft that, has a long-standing history of when someone builds a business on top of them, then taking on that business, any business that's like truly successful on any of the centralized platforms, typically becomes sort of gobbled up by that company and becomes another service that they offer. Maintaining that independence. So we're always, looking for partnerships and to help people bring data onto the network. We are also, working with companies that are building on top of Filecoin. So there's a wonderful group called Huddle One that does an alternative to Zoom or Google Meets. It's like a video conferencing, fully decentralized, built on top of Filecoin. There's kind of the sky's the limit as far as things that you can build on top of Filecoin. Any highlights? Actually, Rachel, you always have some great companies that you love that built on Filecoin.
Huddle's one of my favorites. Another that I think is really cool is Numbers. It's a group. It's a female-led group out of Taiwan. And they are integrating Filecoin and IPFS into a tool that they've built called the Capture app, which is a video and photo authentication app that you know, when you take a photo or a video, it doesn't just give you latitude and longitude. It actually like digitally gives you a digital fingerprint for that photo or video, so that if the photo or video is manipulated or changed over time, you know that that has happened. And they've put this into practice. They documented the Taiwanese elections last year using this app that is, of course, you know, built on Filecoin and IPFS. So those are really fun things for us to see. Let's see, what else do I think is cool? Then there's a lot of like, just like we continue to build on top of the protocol to make the protocol more valuable and usable itself. So like another example is like a really cool team called Storacha, and they are building hot storage on the Filecoin network. So like Filecoin, like Sriracha, but Storacha. Yeah,
what they did there.
isn't that cute?
Exactly, hot storage.
And they have a hot chicken as their logo. It's worth checking out. And that's also a female founded and led organization, and which I just think is cool to see in crypto, and I'm highlighting that. And yeah, so they're building this hot layer. So Filecoin is really great for archival storage, but Sriracha helps with like fast hot storage and retrievals. So as these teams help improve the core protocol, it will enable other teams to build really great things too.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Gosh, wow. Well, let's see. I mean, from that, just overall back to that kind of narrative perspective, I think we're seeing a lot right now around the digital assets sort of investment space as let's say DeepIn, AI agents, also a lot around I think the mobilization of kind of more of these social tokens around, you know, communities, ideologies, new ways of monetizing economies. So I think that's something that we're very I guess overall themes that we're very interested in kind of coming into 2025. I think that overall the yeah, this does appear to be a real kind of inflection point in the let's say, well, in the kind of world economy overall, but also a way in which I think there are a lot more varied opportunities for decentralized systems to really add a lot of value. So I'm really excited for 2025 and some of the opportunities that it can bring. I think we discussed the topic of quantum maybe just briefly, but that seems to be one where maybe quantum hasn't quite had its iPhone moment yet. Of like, you know, I think with AI it was Chat GPT, and then all of a sudden, just AI seems maybe like it's kind of here to stay, whereas quantum's been kind of jumping in and out of kind of the public eye, I would say. What are your thoughts on decentralization, blockchain, and quantum, especially as it relates to, say, quantum resistant blockchains, or the ability, I guess, yeah, more accurately, where do you see the opportunities for synergy, and where do you see some of the potential threats to blockchain around kind of the developing quantum space?
I'll jump in, sure.
Sure.
You know, I think this is where, you know, just to harken back to like the beginning of our conversation, being able to look at the blockchain technologies outside of, you know, just currency related. The the encryptions that the encryption mechanisms that people are concerned about with cryptocurrencies, you know, really don't have the same negative effects if they're, you know, broken, if you're just talking about blockchain as a more general technology. And I think that's where a lot of the value of, you know, DeepIn networks, because there's not really the same like monetary gain for like breaking the system. You're not trying to break into a wallet. You know, if you have an open ledger that's tracking a supply chain, you know, there's nothing there that is going to be sort of like hurt or broken by the new technologies that would be enabled by, you know, by quantum computing. And I think that's like why it's really important to be thinking about blockchain as more generalized technology and not sort of pigeonholed into this cryptocurrency world.
That's fair. But then,
Yeah.
let's say for Filecoin, or you know, Phil File as a token itself, what's your perspective?
I'm not sure if I have a perspective. I do think that, the quantum computing is still ways out for, having practical applications. So at the moment, I'm not terribly worried. Also, all current banking would break if we're able to, if we're able to break, encryption using quantum computing.
That's a good
like,
answer. I mean,
yeah.
I get asked that a lot, as from people who are, say, like in oh yeah, thank you. It's get asked that a lot from people who are considering, say, allocating into Bitcoin or Filecoin or as the case may be, getting into digital assets for the first time. So what happens if if all computers in the world shut down and and all the internet cables get ripped up and stuff? And I'm like, well, we would have far bigger problems, and basically literally everything else that you're involved in your life would have same or probably much worse problems than this. So these are yeah. So yeah. So those are fair perspectives as well. But what are you most excited about, kind of stepping into 2025? What do you see as kind of the major opportunities for the organization, as well as for let's say the world in general?
Sure. Wow.
Question.
Yeah, right.
Pressure.
Predictions. Well, it's a great question. I mean, I feel like this is a moment where people are turning their attention back to crypto. It's, I think, for the last 4 years, especially in the US, it was sort of on the back burner. And so I think we have and we haven't been standing on the sidelines over the last 4 years, right? We've been busy. The teams in our ecosystem have been busy building, and there's a lot to show for it now. And so I'm really excited that the attention's sort of turning back to this industry, and we have a lot to talk about and a lot to show for it. And again, as we talked about, like with AI sort of taking center stage, like and with DPIN being like really hot, and utility tokens and all of these utility projects being sort of hot stories to tell. Again, this is me with my marketing hat on. I'm excited. I feel like there's a lot coming for us, and that we just have such incredible project partners that we work with. I mean, not to name drop, but just some of the groups that we work with. We work with Harvard's Library Innovation Lab. We work with MIT on their open courseware. We work with Smithsonian, as I said. We work with the Starling Lab, which has uploaded and archived 55,000 genocide survivor testimonies onto the Filecoin network, and is now actually building new AI agent models. That group is doing other things, and we're working with them on that. We work with Guardian Project and several other sort of like citizen journalism groups to support their work. So with the tide turning and more people sort of renewed interest in decentralized technologies, I'm excited to tell those stories. What are you excited about, Megan?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just piggybacking off of that, like I do think that, Filecoin has been heads down and building for the last 4 years, and now with, kind of like renewed excitement over crypto, and potentially more permissive regulatory space for being able to build out the real technology, like real projects that are building on the technology of blockchain, combined with the real and actual need for large amounts of data storage. That is the side effect of of AI, the side effect of wanting to use AI for more robotics and physical networks. um I think that that's like a beautiful intersection for being able to really see blockchain technology leapfrog and kind of come into its own. Like we've really truly only scratched the surface on what this technology can do. And I think we're 2025, all the factors are coming together to um, let us really start to explore more of what, really see the fruits of what the technology is able to do. I think especially in projects like Filecoin, where, we're especially well suited to this new era of needing a bunch of data.
Right on. Right on. Well, I think just on time, actually. I think that was our last question. But yeah, Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate your perspectives. And yeah, here's to a beautiful 2025 for Filecoin and for the space in general. Yeah.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
That was wonderful.
And where are you based?
Washington, D.C.
Right.
How about you?
Okay, the mic is active. You're streaming. Awesome.
If you want to sit now,
Did you get closer? No? It's closing.
Get cozy. All right. So, welcome everyone to our panel on decentralized storage, AI, and user experience. I'm moderating this panel. My name is David Doss, the founder of CKC Fund. We're a digital asset investment management company. I'm joined by a healthy group of esteemed panelists here. I would love to have you all just briefly introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Ambrielle Pouncey. I'm a social innovation strategist based in San Francisco, and I founded an organization to advance and accelerate circularity and sustainability in the fashion and textile industry, Fusion Fashion Tech Society. Thank you. Happy to be here with you all today.
Yeah, so my name, sorry. So my name is Stefan. Most people in the industry know me as Crypto Shorts. I run an advisory firm, but I'm also doing some educational stuff in the crypto sphere. Invested in a couple of companies. Yeah, trying to get the word out there. Helping people understand what we actually do and how we make the world a better place and space. And I guess, yeah, if you want to know more, check me out on the promenade.
Sounds good, Stefan. My name is Magnus Jones. I'm based in Oslo, in Norway. I used to be the Nordic blockchain and innovation lead at EY Ernst Young for close to 10 years. Started my own consultancy now last year, working A to Z within this landscape, everything from the smallest DeFi actors of DAOs, DAO foundations, and all of that stuff to the corporate side on the other side. Also working close together with governments as part of Interpol, United Nations, OSCE, etc. Also contributing on the academic side also. So A to Z within this landscape in some matter.
Yeah, and I'm Reza. I'm a German-based lawyer. I'm an active in crypto for some years, 2014 till now, and doing lots of things, mostly related to regulation. And yeah, I'm here to also speak to you and to put some shed on it, some light on the shed on light regarding regulation on these topics.
Hey everyone, Porter Stoll, head of growth for an ecosystem via IBM Blockchain, Coinbase, and now working on decentralized storage.
Well, thank you everyone for joining. And again, this is our Digital Davos panel 2025 on decentralized storage. So a question first to Porter for patiently waiting, going the rounds here. What is your take on decentralized storage solutions and scalability opportunities and challenges for enterprises that are going into the blockchain space in 2025?
Sure. The biggest problem with decentralized storage right now is not a scalability challenge. There's tons of capacity out there on the network. Filecoin has close to 2 exabytes capacity. The problem is Web2 public cloud provider currently for why do I need to make this change? Luckily, AI is coming. And as you go down the AI rabbit hole, you're seeing a huge push from confidential compute to verifiable compute, where now you're seeing digital signatures done at the hardware level, and you're going to have full auditability of every piece of content that goes into an LLM. And this is what you see OpenAI, Anthropic. They're all trying to increase transparency on the data used for every single model, every single decision. And that's the transparency that all AI is going for. And if you get to verifiable compute, it's very easy to see how you're going to get to take the next step to verifiable storage. So you need to prove, like almost think of it like a quality stamp of quality assurance, that when you put data on the Filecoin network, you're getting a timestamp proof that your data is still stored in its current state and hasn't been altered. And as you scale up AI activities, you're just going to need those stamps. Those are going to be your quick signal that, all right, my compute was verified, the data's immutable, and that's been verified. Now I can move on. So it's just it allows for faster processes, faster checks on the data itself. Because in the rise of AI, it's just going to be insurmountable to audit it, and you just need these checks constantly going in the background for you to scale up. Because again, everyone from a bank to any enterprise to an individual wants that assurances that there's no problems underneath the hood.
I think that's a great answer about especially underneath the hood of decentralized storage and AI. Let's talk about maybe the more the cosmetic side, decentralized storage, blockchain, and AI. What are people's thoughts on the user experience challenges and opportunities around that? Maybe someone can chime in on that one.
I'm super happy to take everything on the UX side because UX, and that's my humble opinion, still sucks. We need to make it accessible. It needs to be the least amount of hurdles in a process for everyone that is involved, so for all the stakeholders to access and verify. As Porter started. It's how do we get there? How do we get to the point? How do we verify things? And I think, yeah, whatever you do, make sure you have the best possible UX. And if I'm always a quick example. And I'm not supported by Apple or anything, but I'm advertising iPhone right now, and Android is doing exactly the same. So if I'm calling my mom picks up the phone, it works. And I think that's the same path we need to go in the blockchain world, combined with AI. I think that's great opportunities, as Porter touched on. But I think that's where we need to go. We need to get people, companies, institutions there that they don't need to think how things are done. Things are just there, and it's like easy to execute on it.
And I think, yeah, a clear example is what we had on a panel yesterday, where I had the head of Digital Asset Hub Group from SAP joining us, and where, when they have integrated that, you can actually pay your invoices with stablecoins. That's the first step, that it's in there as a layer, and that's what the blockchain is really about. It's just a protocol layer that's going to be connected to existing infrastructure. So that's also where I believe, on the storage side, it needs to be integrated into your existing systems, not a standalone magic sparkling solution down in the corner of another desktop icon. That will never function. That's the same thing if you look into supply chain or not. That's why 90% of all shitty supply chain solutions since 2015-ish has failed. So it's about, like Stefan says, it's about the integration in the daily operational side. So that's down to your mom, but it's also down to the back office people who is actually handling it and using it in practice. That's the key thing. So again, to the supply chain case, in almost all cases, you actually have to extract the data manually and manually punch it into the ERP system again. So these people in there says, thank you, Magnus. I have 6 times more to do now thanks to this beautiful blockchain thing. So that's clearly one of the main things that is being dealt with also currently. If you just take the example of SAP, and where you can scale it in a much larger degree than selling your magic blockchain solution, which everyone tends to do.
They invest in collectibles and they do it with their smartphone, and there's a token, but they do not put the token out there and say, okay, you invest in a collectible and you get a token. They say you get a share. There's a token in the background. You need a token, you need the blockchain to really protocol who has ownership of the assets, of the collectibles, but you do not really need to put it in the face of the user. It's okay, you need a wallet, you need a token, you need a blockchain. It just has to work, and the user doesn't care if it's a blockchain or a token, as long as it works.
Makes sense. Well, actually, a question for you when you're done, actually. But
sure.
Yeah.
Last comment. I think you need to also integrate compatible technology. So NFC technology, remember thinking about factory workers and people in the field who don't have a lot of experience with technology, but they can just scan an NFC chip and then connect all of that information to the blockchain seamlessly, then I think we see a change in accessibility. And I think that is really important. But go right ahead with your question.
Yeah, well, you segued it, so thanks for helping me make my job easier. The question was around accessibility and sustainability, inclusivity of these systems. I mean, we had this little pre-panel warm up where you were talking about the relationship between fashion, sustainability, inclusivity. Could you talk more about that for those who weren't behind the scenes here?
Absolutely. So when we're thinking about cradle to cradle global supply chains in the fashion and textiles world, what we're thinking about is how do we connect all these things in a way that adds transparency and traceability and trust, right? So anytime we're talking about blockchain, we're typically integrating trusted systems, computing systems together in some capacity. In this instance, what we would need to do is integrate a few technologies, and some of them emerging, some of them futurist, right? Some things like quantum computing, quantum sensing, IoT sensors for environmental data aggregation can be very helpful when we're talking about cradle to cradle. As I mentioned, NFC chip, instead of using number systems to tag, for example, goats that are being sheared for fibers, for rural fiber, we could use an NFC chip as the tagging mechanism, and then we could have more equitable distribution of our common pool resources and governance around it, because we would know that every time a shearer shears a goat, that goat we have protected the person through equitable distribution of funds, and we're also protecting the animal through animal welfare protection, because we know how many times that goat is sheared, and we know the conditions of that goat shearing environment because of the environmental data that we can collect with IoT sensors, all being fed back through smart contract execution into the blockchain. So there's many ways we can think about global supply chain optimization, but it requires a multi-stakeholder collaboration, and also requires a connection between the people and the government to make this a reality.
Well, okay.
Just to follow up on that one, also a very important element in the whole value chain that you described there is naturally what is coming, like you say, digital product passporting requirement, legal requirements coming up from the government side, regardless of if it's hardware or clothing or food or whatever. However, what we see in most of these solutions, and I've been working with lots of different, including, you mentioned fashion, Norwegian Fashion Hub, I've done several reports and projects in traceability, sustainability, and all this thing. And normally what we see is that you only verify your own data. Like we talked about IBM or whatever, you come in and IBM has verified it, but still it's amendable. And that's the big problem there, because you can say, yeah, can you trust it because it's just on the blockchain? No, bloody way. I say, don't trust anything unless you know where the data comes in. It's what we call in Norway, shit in, shit out. It's very easy. So that's also where you clearly need, and why I brought in the sustainability team when I was with EY and said, hey, we need at least 3 independent parties who verify the data that goes in. Then you can suddenly trust it. So that's also an element that needs to be scaled up in a totally different way compared to everyone just saying, oh, we have put it on the blockchain, and we said today no children was at the factory, there's no pollution in the rivers actually today because we put it on the blockchain, but can you trust it? So you need independent parties that comes in there and actually verifies the data. So if Deloitte had a sensor in there and EY had a sensor and another third party, well, then you could actually trust it in a larger way, that you don't think it's a conspiracy between all of these parties. So that's also a very important element to take into consideration that currently is not dealt with today.
Sorry, I'm going to give it to you in a
Yeah,
second.
yeah.
I mean, exactly that thing what you talk about is the oracles. The oracles are like the bridge between the blockchain and the real world. And if we do not have like the trust in an oracle, you can forget the trust in the blockchain. Another example, carbon credits. So I was doing a project with carbon credit issuers back in the days, like 4 years ago, and I wanted to put the carbon credit on the blockchain, and some project in South America. And I asked them, okay, how can we make sure that these carbon credits were not already sold in advance to some other buyer? So you like the issue of double buying, or double selling. And so I don't know how, and this is a big issue. You must verify the information which goes on the blockchain. The oracle has to be maybe an auditor, maybe someone who you trust, but we can't say that, okay, we use the blockchain and everything is trustworthy. It doesn't work like this.
Yeah, and I just want to make Magnus, an amendment to the point you made. You were talking about an IoT sensor, and it's not that EY and Deloitte will have their own sensor and everyone will have their own sensor. You're going to have one sensor, but what you're really talking about is a permission layer where you're managing the access to that sensor's data. And it's like, again, you can have an independent sensor in there, but how do you do permissioning around the data coming out? This is what you see going on in open banking within the UK right now. Yeah, they're trying to get to a regulatory framework, but again, it's the same data, same transactions going around, but it's the problem on why this hasn't proliferated as much as it should have is because it's a permissioning problem. So you're getting a lot of technologies coming out that are trying to do access control, security, and permissioning, so data becomes more shareable. In my world, in the AI world that I operate in, that's the big blocker. 90% of the data that it's ever created in a business never gets used. So why is that? It's because you can't confidently share that data without fear of it getting stolen, ripped off, deleted, something. So once companies get comfortable sharing their data because there's proper protections and securities and permissions, that's when there's a big unlock within the economy.
Just to add to that, to clarify, because it like you say, in some cases you will have one census. That's right, but it all depends on the goods what you're shipping, and it depends on the value chain and how many parties it's involved. Because, for example, when I was involved in the world's first salmon tracing solution many years ago, and there you tamper with different parts of the box. So that's also, we also need to have hidden sensors in there in order to also ensure that it's not tampered with. So that's all depending on what type of goods it is in some matter.
And I will hopefully close this question for you. Many more to go, yes. And also in the fashion and textiles world, there's certification, right? I mean, you have to have sustainability certification. Okiotex, Testex here in Switzerland is one of the largest ones, the certification bodies that is going around and ensuring that sustainability is actually what is being improved in these factories and in the environments. And the blockchain obviously can add to that because the certifications can be kept on chain. Currently, they're independent and just stored in the filing system of wherever manufacturing house it is, which isn't good. The last thing I'll add to this is that currently the digital product passport does not require blockchain. It does not require an on-chain environment at all. It can just be a QR code, which is problematic in itself because, again, we go back to the data issue. And then again, trust in the data is always going to be an issue anytime you're in a manufacturing environment where you have a multi-stakeholder collaboration, and requiring some type of data trust system is imperative, but you have to have regulators, and those regulators have to be third-party regulators that also are answering to a certification body. So all those things have to be put into play.
Makes sense. Well, so switching gears back to some of the government side that several people have raised. I mean, I know you were talking about some of the German regulatory frameworks, and certainly Germany has been pioneering a lot of regulatory structures in this space. What is your perspective on regulation differences across different countries, especially, for example, between Europe and North America versus, say, Asia, the Middle East? And then also, where do you see opportunities for collaboration? Where do you see opportunities for differentiation around these topics?
Yeah, I mean, regulation really also depends on the industry. So if we talk about the banking and capital markets industry, so there we have something which is called harmonized regulation. So now we have like the so-called MiCA, markets and crypto assets regulations, which is harmonizing the regulation on crypto assets within the European Economic Area. And this is very important, but not just within the European Economic Area, because if we talk about blockchain, about DLT, it is actually borderless. So what I would imagine, if we talk about any industry using the blockchain, we should have a harmonized regulation globally. It doesn't make sense if you like say, oh, I can do the business here in Europe like this, but then if my customers are in Switzerland, which is not part of the European Economic Area, can I still do it or not? And if I want to attract like US investors or US users or people from the US, so how does it work? And this is something I think which is very important. So I would say when you look at regulation, especially in financial markets, Europe is maybe a little bit ahead. So now looking at the US with Trump coming in and hopefully trying to also put some harmonization there, and maybe there's something which is called equivalence, which means if the US has some regulation in place which is similar to the European regulation, we can say it's equivalent, and therefore you can do business together even though US is not part of the European Union. And this is something which I hope is going to happen at some shorter time. So maybe in the next 1 till 3 years, and also we bring in Asia and Africa, and then it would really work out. And you can apply that logic also outside of the financial industry, of the fashion industry, of the pharmacy industry, of any other industry, that we need harmonized regulation.
Makes sense. Well, and Porter, what's your perspective around, say, for example, Filecoin with being, let's say, having a lot of business in the US, but also being a global organization that's been taking part in, say, Davos over the years and such? Where do you see things having sort of shifted over the years here?
I kind of want to piggyback off the regulatory environment question that you just asked. What really caught my attention is Brazil became the first jurisdiction to pass into a bill about digital property rights. UAE is coming in very quickly behind them, they've already drafted regulation on digital property rights. Why would they do that? If you look at the UAE in particular, you're seeing them do a full court press on being a global leader in artificial intelligence. It is coming down from the top. And what's very interesting about the UAE is that they get things done. Like they can get alignment and drive a strategy. Their strategy is well written. It's publicly available online. You can see the UAE's public AI strategy. And now when you're coming in with data ownership and regulate, like data protection, that becomes really interesting. Right now, no one really understands the value of their data. Everyone has downloaded an app on their phone, and the first thing they do is they tell you to accept terms of service. And it kind of feels dirty when you do it. And when you know it's dirty, because basically they're saying, we're going to take your data and we're going to sell it and make lots of money. That's what a terms of service is all about. And there's no alternative. And once people understand that there is an alternative and that your data has value, again, we're not like most people aren't going to monetize their data. It's just not going to, but you want control over it and you want to be able to share it at your own discretion. And if someone wants to pay for it, great. But that's where this is going. And AI is the catalyst for making this happen. That is the biggest change I've seen since this time last year. And I come to a place like Davos and I'm listening to who's talking about data. And I hear a lot of AI talk. I hear 1% data. And that's like, again, why I think Davos is interesting is I have questions in my head about trends, where are things going, where things are. Davos is a great place to get those answers. Maybe you're not getting the answers, and that tells you something as well. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and so thinking about this from the investment perspective, what are people's thoughts on the trends we're seeing around this topic in terms of where capital is being allocated, and is that generally the same across different regions, or are there some unique areas in different countries and different
Why specifically? So
it's the shorts.
it's the shorts, yeah. So I'm trying to make short. I mean, so for me, I'm a big fan of Filecoin. So to say, okay. No, but in terms of investment trends, I see them coming and going, and a lot of people just following the narrative. I mean, if we are just looking at the last year, so how the trends have been, and the Porter mentioned data. So but it's like I haven't seen anyone that's approaching me, hey, can you give me funds for some data project, decentralized data sort, whatever. It's more like, hey, we're doing like fancy AI, but wait, you have been in blockchain just like 2 years ago, and that's basically you raced around on blockchain, and now you're an AI project. And sometimes I'm really like I don't know, I like my brain goes everywhere because sometimes I know the people pretty in depth, and they're just, okay, man, we need a new funding round, so now we're an AI company and all this kind of shit. So, but yeah, I mean, I think they're great opportunities, and there are only a few companies, if it comes, and I'm not naming. I mean, we have Porter here, so I'm naming Filecoin, and later I'm wearing my Filecoin swag just for you. No, but
Shorts coming out.
No, but I have a Filecoin vest. Funny enough, like that's 2 years back at Davos. So that's okay, but that's a different story. So I think there are great opportunities, and I think there also should be great opportunities, and others should take the opportunities, and we should see more investments in small companies, because I mean, I think we're going into the same dilemma that we currently have with the big companies that we're going into with a decentralized storage companies. I mean, it's not like a shitload out there. So, and there might be other verticals that Filecoin might not be covering that might be interesting for other use cases. And I think, but hey, if you have an idea, approach us. Might be a good one, and we might organize you the funding if we like the idea. But the thing is, I haven't been approached. Like, I haven't been approached over the last years. Anyone decentralized storage, and I think and that's why usually I'm the guy that disagrees, but I'm agreeing with Porter. I think they are great opportunities, combining AI or the AI layer in terms of accessibility, and I need to, because it stayed on me and I wasn't asked on this question. We just need to take out complexity. Yeah, I've been listening to all of you, and you're probably all right. My mind is too simple on that, and but we're still talking. And there was also a panel talk 2 years ago in Davos with some founders of L1s, L2s, and everyone is super convinced that they have the best solution. But then it's like, I'm, as you heard earlier, I'm the UX guy. So people are coming up and saying, we have the best tech and we're the cheapest. I say, okay, man, that's cool. That's cool. But me as a company, me as a private person, I couldn't care less if it's not accessible. And then I'm listening to all of you, like, out of feeling like, okay, we have regulation here. We need to trust parties. And I'm not going with everything you said. So like we need like a certain layer. I have to feel like it all need to be like verifiable on a data layer, so that I don't need to trust any of you, but that I have the final truth, the finite truth on chain, and that's a truth. So we're not talking about trust anymore. We're talking about truth. If someone can solve this problem, then I'm saying that's a great investment idea.
I just want to tell a quick story about a founder. So I know a founder. He was going for AI-based training modules to transform your professional journey. It's basically a tool to have AI define your superpower as a professional. He was trying to raise money, and he just got blocker after blocker after blocker. Great transformational idea. So he said, screw it. I'm just going to do an AI bot for NFT training, and it's just going to print me money. And like, he tried to go the right path, was blocked by VC, and now he just prints money trading NFTs.
But that's also what you clearly see, because we have a similar project in Norway to Filecoin called Ayagan, and there's also it's hard for him to raise the VC money, but he can shell the tokens. So there's interest in the tokens per se, and that's where you get sort of your funding in, not from the pure VC side. I don't see the whole perspective due to the complexity. So it's also who you address in what kind of way. So either you shell some NFTs, like you said, that's sort of saying where the irony is that that's where the money is currently. So there's de facto a long way to go in so matter.
Sorry, one more thing I'm going to give to you. So I honestly believe that the best industry to invest in is those industries which are transparently regulated. It always goes back to the financial market. So we now talk about real world asset tokenization, for example. So you in the end of the day, if you tokenize a collectible, if you tokenize fashion, if you could tokenize anything, it becomes a financial instrument. It is regulated quite transparently, no matter in Europe or in the US. And this is why you should invest. If you do something like new, something.
Might I fully disagree on that one?
I'm going to give it quickly to you. I'm going to give you an example why it doesn't work where the industry is not regulated. If you look at the WorldCoin, this is a project with the iris scan. So if you think about it, it's actually quite smart to say, okay, you scan the iris and you can use the data you have from the iris for future maybe identification purposes. But then when people are looking into this case, think, okay, he's walking around and giving people like 20 or 30 or 40 euro to have the right on the iris to do something with it. And then everyone like raised their hands and, oh, no, that's not working because it's not regulated. This topic is not regulated. Yeah. And this is why it didn't really work out, because everyone was like getting panicked because they didn't really understand what it is, and it didn't work out. But I thought in the beginning it's actually a cool case. Yeah, it's a good case, but it doesn't work out, even though it's a brilliant idea, because it's not regulated.
Okay, and then now comes my take why I don't fully agree with you. And usually we're super agreeable on a lot of topics. It's not. I mean, we shouldn't always tackle things from a regulatory perspective. We're talking too much about regulation. I know the Germans, and I'm a German. Writing law, yeah, like writing shitty a framework. And if you call this regulation, that's okay for me. But I would more call it framework and common sense. Yeah, and I know that doesn't work for every case. But hey, we don't need to have like the final explanation, another page in the textbooks. It will get us nowhere. I mean, tech is moving so fast, maybe faster than ever. And if we're looking at Moore's law and whatever, I mean, the tech world last year is totally different to the tech world today. I mean, even though, I'm not talking about AI. I mean, AI is like it's a decades old topic. So, or machine learning, put it like this. Otherwise, people saying, okay, this guy's nuts. But so yeah, we are so fast. So and regulation can't keep up. So we need when we discuss it in other panels, sandbox environment. We need frameworks so that people can try and test things and then make it work instead of but we need another law to or an AI act or whatever. Yeah. So I mean, I'm free world.
When I think about investing, I always think about someone creating a solution for biometric data protection. And I think that when we think about our biometric data, our data that is scanned when we go to buy eyeglasses, when we go to use Clear, if we're going through the airport, but in the fashion and textile industry, anytime we have to put information into a website or any platform to get sizing or get any biometric data about our body composition, what is the protection and governance around our biometric data and so forth with the healthcare system, right? When we go and we have to provide healthcare data, and we may want to do that through virtual healthcare systems. Who's providing the protections and the governance, and what is the solution that's going to come out of this as to someone's going to want to do some impact investing around governance of biometric data. So that's what I think about a lot.
Well, as again, you've teed up the segue to our last.
Saying the guy wearing an Oura ring, giving.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but to that point about the larger, geopolitical and kind of macroeconomic themes right now, curious how you see your perspectives on basically some of the narratives that are very present this Davos, such as self-sovereignty of data on national levels, cyber warfare, tariffs, trade wars. How does this affect this topic of data storage, decentralized data, these sorts of things? Who would like to take that one?
Let me start. Yeah. So maybe I start with data, and some of us are flying regularly to the UAE, and no one is asking. I mean, if you're passing the airport, it's just like you're getting scanned, like face scan, palm scan, all this kind of shit. So what is happening with the data? I have no idea. I mean, people are not even thinking about it. I'm not saying don't fly to the UAE. It's a great place, and but people tend to go the easy way. They don't want to think, and we're conditioned to not overthink things. I talked to someone about who's doing it. I'm not telling a company, but basically you can reclaim, or you can basically sell the data that you want to sell and getting rewarded for it. That is the best example. The device costs roughly $15. They're charging you $20, $25 to the so but we're conditioned to do exactly that. So that's basically that take on a national level. So if we're looking at a health system in Germany, for example, I can also bring up Switzerland. So data is stored. I have no fucking idea what's happening with my data. I have no control over my data. And I think in Germany it's even worse because I'm just getting a bill. I don't even know what I was charged for. Yeah. So if I'm not a private patient, so that's the thing. Like here in Switzerland, I would say at least I have a bit of control. I see and all this kind of stuff. But I think that's super. It's not like but we can wait for government and we can do this and it will happen at some point. No, it will not. So and why should it? I mean, what is the interest? And I mean that's like I know that's technically not answering your question directly. It's more like opening up another question. But it's just like, hey, in the end, it's up to us. And I don't really feel it. That we see huge changes. The feelings that I have is we are becoming more and more transparent on a government level, and that's also if we're looking at CBDCs around the globe and how it is or how people dealing with the same instrument in different ways. So that's basically a concern that I would raise, and I'm leaving this open question. Maybe I'm I'm overcautious on that point, but I see like technology is good, has some great opportunities, but it's always a matter of how I'm using it. If I'm giving you a chainsaw and I'm telling you, hey, put the nail into the wall, it's going to be difficult. Yeah. So it's always a matter of like, can be mass murder. So, yeah.
Just adding to that, I think that's very, very valid points. And you mentioned CBDCs, and I've been involved in the Norwegian Central Bank's digital central digital CBDC project, and there they were looking into EVM based on Ethereum, and they were looking into using zero knowledge proofs in Somata. And when I still was with EY then, we were the first one to sort of lead the way from the corporate side of that one. This works very well because we can also set a threshold towards transactions below €100. We should not have insight on that. Should be, anonymous in Somata. But what they clearly said, and this is the first time I ever respected any kind of governments, and that's not because I'm a conspiracy theorist or whatever, it's because we based it up on facts, because we know the potential lays there. And they said, but still, Magnus, we have keys to that data. We can open it, we can misuse it. So if there's a key to open something, we will not use it. So sorry, we will not go for this one, because we have to be 100% sure that no one can actually access this data. So if there's one, that's not good enough for us. So I think on the other side, use this magic technology, so we cannot see it. It's so brilliant, but still there's ways to deal with it, and it will not be dealt with today maybe, but in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, when you cannot trust it for it. And it's a very important element of the security surrounding the data that we're building now. So I think just mentioning on the CBDC side, where we actually have people who is the time make a stand towards. I'm not sure if we don't deal with it now, it's gone, because we do so many small steps over the way, and then people have no clue. They just deal with it. And like you say, you just click, all terms and conditions, and you're there.
The audience from 50 was climbing over 200. We have now over 300 live audience.
Okay, well, with that, for those that haven't spoken in the kind of recent times, is there a topic that we haven't yet covered that you think may be relevant for our audience? I think it would be maybe the three of you.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
Who's you?
Sorry, what's your name again? Alan Brielle. Because you're coming from the fashion standpoint, right? If there's one thing I learned about technology change and adoption, is that you're never going to get, well, I should say not never, but it's very, very difficult to get people to change an existing process or workflow. How do you see like the trends in modular fashion design or just-in-time fashion design, like, where they're being very responsive, containerized fashion development? Is that the opportunity for blockchain? Like when you're starting with something net new, where you can put some of these best practices and things that you've been talking about into the new system, rather than having to change the old one?
Great question, Porter. So two things, Porter. So one element of this question that you've asked is, I would not go with just-in-time manufacturing being the most applicable way to utilize blockchain. What I would say is what we want to look at is systems that are developing, right, and enabling designers to manufacture things or to produce fashion in a new way. So with generative AI, right, we know now that we can have whole collections developed and showcase those collections virtually to our buyers around the globe. And those buyers now can purchase things ahead of schedule, ahead of season. And now we have a manufacturing system that enables us to have archival collections, because then we have archival AI use that we can integrate as well. All of those elements can now be executed on chain. So we have the designers' archives now that can be on chain, so they can pull from those to use generative AI to create new collections. And then you have the consumers being able to buy directly from those generative AI collections that have been developed. And then all of that can be connected to the blockchain in a way that we have identifiers to individuals. And we can even create digital trends of past collections. So we have a lot of layers that we can do outside of relying on systems that are very fast fashion centric, which is what we want to move away from. We want to make people to having, like you said, human behavior is very difficult to change. And when you talk about anything that's socially conscious, like fashion designs, we're also talking about the Veblen effect, whereas there's a fear of missing out comes into play, and social media halls come into play, and fast fashion wins at this game, right? How do we get people out of the mindset of fast fashion? How do we get them into the mindset of durability and in sustainability? And one way to do that is to show a new approach to the industry. And I think AI helps us with that, generative AI. And I think blockchain adds in that layer of transparency we need. And lastly, I think that having identifiers that are personalized. We want to personalize the industry as much as possible. That's where the digital product passport comes into play, because now when I scan my scarf with my NFC chip, that scarf is mine. So when my friend says that is a fake designer scarf, I can scan it and I can verify that it isn't fake because it has a serial number that is connected right to the retailer, and all of these elements flow together. And if we're very smart and we have a very good retailer that has implemented on-chain processing, then that NFC chip is going to also enable me to show certification on-chain. So that's the approach I would take with that. But I wanted to go backwards, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go backwards, and I'm probably going to, I don't want to take too much of our time. I want to go backwards to where have we seen digital identities written and digital identification systems seem like they're more seamless. And one of the places I've seen it personally is Estonia. When you go into Talon, the e-verification systems, all of them are so well orchestrated, and the data maintenance and data governance and data protections are so apparent and seem to be very, very much so kept astute, and everyone seems to be on the same accord in terms of the use cases and even in their sustainability approaches. They are very much so ahead of time in terms of digital identities and e-verifications. So I think that's somewhere we've seen Estonia, Tallinn, Estonia, or any of Eastern Europe, a lot of adopting similar processes. And I think Estonia is leading the way.
Absolutely. I just want to add on that. Absolutely, I'm with you. I saw it with Ukraine. We have lots of Ukrainians in Germany, and they showed me their app where they have every kind of document inside, any kind of identity. And they told me they have this app for a long time running. And it really helped them also to cross borders when during the war, because I mean, who has time to like take the bag and put a passport in it and yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a nice example, but you don't have to look that far that far to understand it. I mean, for me, for example, I was driving in from Germany, and I basically forgot to take my wallet with me because I never use my wallet. And then when I got here, they asked me for the ID, and I didn't have it. And I was thinking it's actually so stupid to like show your ID, a piece of paper which doesn't have any kind of like proof and trust. Why can't we put like our ID as Ukraine is doing it in an app which is verified by blockchain and very transparent, and they can take it everywhere with you? Why do you need to take some documents with you? Why can't you use like an app as Estonia or Ukraine is doing it, and for different kind of information?
Or did you have any last thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I kind of just want to leave the audience with the question I have. Here we have all these intelligent people in the room. Let's drop some alpha on them. What's the thing that you feel most passionate about over the next, call it 5 years, that you think is a trend or an investment opportunity or something that like you've picked up from this week in Davos? We're on the ground here. What is your biggest observation or point of conviction over the next 5 years in digital technology?
Can you answer that from your perspective first?
All right. I'll dog food my own question. I believe without hesitation that the biggest opportunity in technology is going to be the rise of the intelligence economy, where data is going to evolve into an asset. Now, asset has there's a lot of preconceived notions about that term asset. I think the majority of it's going to be an intrinsic value. So again, like I can love my couch and I could look forward to sitting on it every day, but it doesn't have much extrinsic value. But there's intrinsic value and there's extrinsic value. And data is going to be the biggest trend as it evolves into an asset class over the next 20 years. Remember that AI is a tool. It is a transformational, amazing, powerful tool, but at the end of the day, it's a tool. It is powered by data. And once people realize the true value of their data, which has been obfuscated for us since the invention of the internet, on purpose by Web 2 technologies and Web 1, like that was their business model. They're trying to prevent us from realizing the value of our data. That is going to be the biggest technological trend. And I am an active investor and builder in this ecosystem on data itself.
I mean, 5 years ahead, it's very difficult. I would have said, if you would have asked me like 2 days ago, would say meme coins. Kidding. So no, I mean, I'm totally against this kind of trends like meme coins. So, but I fully understand you, but I mean, I'm in this market for more than 10 years, and it's very difficult to look 5 years ahead. I'm happy to look only this year ahead. And for me, organization and something which really works out. I mean, this digital property laws is very interesting, but in 1 year we don't get it in Europe. But if we can put as much rights and information and anything you can think of in a token and can make it then tradable on a secondary market or movable without the need of going back off chain, this would be something very interesting. And I think this may happen this year, and we should follow that closely.
I believe that, and your question was in 5 years? Well, yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Because I normally see things in sort of 1 to 3, 3 to 5, and 5 to 10. And 1 to 3, nothing happens in practice. That's status quo. 3 to 5 is something more, and 5 to 10. However, if we go back to, I agree with you also on the regulation side. Stefan, in terms of it, but regardless of we like it or hate it or be ignorant towards it, indifferent, it is there, it's coming. And like you mentioned, we know certain things that will come and are coming. And specifically when it comes to digital product passporting, we know that will come much more stronger in the 5-year perspective. So I believe it will be there where you connect, call it all the dots for the logic sense of the protocol layers of infrastructure where you connect them. Because like you say today, you can perfectly well, and most solutions are not based upon blockchain when it comes to digital product passporting. However, if you look at 5 years ahead, and if you see now actors like SAP already integrating the stablecoin elements, there's a logic sense to connect yourself to some layer that is neutral towards your ERP systems. And that's one of the key things here, to be able to connect, to get data regardless of which ERP system you are on. Because regardless of you are in a large conglomerate of a company, sometimes you even use different ERP systems and different data sets there. And that's a challenge that needs to be tackled. So I believe that we will see much more of that common structure being in place, and to fill up on, call it the bus side sort of thing. 2 years ago when we were, Stefan, Metaverse was a bloody big thing. That was the shit. WEF released a report on Metaverse. I created the world's first government Metaverse office for Norwegian tax authorities and the business register office. Facebook. Exactly. But if you look into it, and I see Metaverse as much more that the pink glorified Miami Vice landscape where you have the pixel graphic of your Nokia phone from 97, It's about XR, AI, and blockchain, and a combination. That's Metaverse, and that will evolve in something totally different than we see today. And I believe specifically the sports industry is one of the first one who is going to evolve on this one. So if you just think about the concept there of the power that lays there in terms of what we have access to devices. So if you mentioned Apple as one, they're just leading the way. So when you also see prices drop on their goggles, you can use them at home. So if we were there to see a football match, for example, or a basketball match or whatever, or a tennis match together, we could sit virtually next to each other. I could wear my virtual Gucci belt, for that matter's sake. You could have your virtual Louis Vuitton bag with you there, sitting there at home. And also when it comes to advertising, it can be perfectly matched towards what we are interested. So we can still be next to each other. We see the same game, but we see different advertisement. That thing is going to explode, I think, in 5 years compared to what it is today, because you can also open up the new Netflix model, because there we can buy, we have 10 call it just, it doesn't have to be NFT, but just an example, 10 unique tickets, go down, stand next to the penalty taker, follow the team into the wardrobe afterwards, all of these additional things. This is Netflix 2.0. That's where I think Metaverse actually will, in terms of XR, AI, and blockchain together, will be huge in 5 years.
So I want to bring up, I mean, and then I want to divide my answer actually, because you asked, or it was about the investment part, right?
More of a prediction.
More of a prediction. Okay, but okay, then it still works. So here goes my prediction: autonomous armies within the next 5 years. So, and I mean, I wrote about it, I don't know, like 1.5 years ago, and the combination of blockchain and AI. So basically, hard coding the kill switch into AI so that this never happens. Like, and I'm not. I mean, back then I wrote it like, "Hey, Terminator, they will come," and that's a concern that I'm having, especially if you're looking about the political tensions that we currently have around the globe, and with I mean, armies lacking resources, and lacking resources, I'm talking about pure humans, yeah. So what is the next step? And that's like, I want to make people think, yeah, and please question everything that I'm saying, and I hope that I'm totally off track, and I hope that I'm so fucking wrong, yeah. So, but that's something, if we're looking at development in robotics, if we're looking at development in AI, and if we're looking in blockchain, how it could use, how it's not used in this context, I'm not saying I'm feared or I'm anxious about the things that could happen, but I see this as a potential outcome. And as Magnus said, he's thinking 1, 3, 5, 10 terms. I think 1 to 5. I mean, I've been traveling a couple of conferences last year. Go to Leap, Saudi Arabia. Damn, you will see shit there. Like, all the tech companies are there, and it's like, and a big part of and we address UAE and Saudi Arabia for that matter. So it's like they're investing like a shitload of money in IoT as well. Yeah, so I mean,
Chinese like dragon displays.
Yeah.
When you see those Chinese dragon displays, and they are amazingly coordinated, are you gonna tell me they can't do the same thing for military? Yeah, like, of course they can.
I mean, if we're looking at how general investments, or where they always came from, or where money is flowing, I mean, if we're looking into the US, and I'm now speaking broadly, like space and defense technology, which is usually the same department. So I mean, I wouldn't be like super surprised if anything comes from that corner, or if any president, for that matter, around the globe will shift some money in development of defense, space, aeronautics, whatever we call it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'll add, I think when we think about emerging markets in continents such as Africa, there's lots of countries that are emerging, Kenya, South Africa, so forth. We have 70%, it's the only continent with 70% of its people under the age of 30. And then with that being said, there's also 7 million people throughout the continent of Africa living in modern slavery. But if we think about the technologies that we're speaking of today, AI and blockchain. And we think about the fact that South Africa has a hub that is dedicated to quantum computing. When we combine all those things, we could see that with all the 40% of the world's minerals being based in Africa, that we would have an environment, an ecosystem where there's a lot of sustainable land development. And with that young of an innovative of a workforce coming in, rising within the next 5 years, we also know that that workforce is going to want to work, and they're going to be able to use the technologies that are being developed. So I think that there is going to be a massive movement in technology within emerging markets, such as within the continent of Africa, where we're going to see more quantum computing. We're going to see IoT sensors being used to expand sustainable land development, and we're going to see regenerative textile, regenerative agricultural development happen at scale in these level within these regions, where they're going to start to also learn within these smaller communities within like the continent of Africa, where they're going without even having to know we have a wallet, or we don't have to know any of this. It's all going to be on chain, and they're going to start requesting more ways to have equitable funds over the natural resources because of the developments of technologies in those areas. So that's what I believe.
Oh, no, that's thank you for sharing that, and thank everyone for your eloquent insights on this. You know, that's with that point. You know, what I would say as my personal take is actually why I do what I do around around managing digital asset investments is really that I agree with everyone. That I'm thinking about all these topics, and that I see, you know, much as we might have kind of an older world order where, you know, a stock portfolio might have healthcare, industrials, technology, etc. I think increasingly we'll see these portfolios with blockchain around blockchain and AI agents, tokenized real world assets. Usage of blockchain around private military, around robotics and warfare, space exploration, quantum computing, sustainability, emerging markets, banking the unbanked. Ultimately, these are essentially the new asset classes, and I think that point around tapping into increasingly sort of decentralized sources of value, tapping into intrinsic values as well as extrinsic values in more advanced ways, is something that the new investment portfolio really looks like. So I think you all have some great perspectives on that, and I also think that this was a very interesting sort of cross section of the Davos experience as well, of I think a lot of very very topical themes. So yeah, really appreciate everyone's time joining this. I know we have an incredible amount of sort of high caliber brain power here. So thank you to everyone who's listened, Davos Chain BLX for organizing this. So with that, hope everyone has a good rest of their Davos and a great rest of their day. All right. That's a wrap. Great.